there's nothing more attractive than someone living their life, someone enjoying their life. And so I would actually just say, live your life, dream, travel, become an expert at something, put in those 10,000 hours to become an expert at your craft. I just always suggest getting involved at your church. Find a good, healthy church and get involved. We're just seeing across the board a much deeper level of hunger. Our corporate times in worship, we're going to a much deeper place than we've ever been. And with our younger generation, they're not interested in fluff, not interested in the surface level. They're really hungry for something authentic, something real, something genuine, and something deeper than what we've experienced in the past.
Welcome to the Collective Talk Podcast Season 3, where we share reflections on prayer, family, and ministry. On today's episode, we'll be talking about music and ministry, and we have a very special guest on the show today, Jessica Stropko, and I'm so excited for you guys to meet her. Can you help me welcome Jessica Stropko to the show?
Yay.
I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. This is such an honor.
I honestly, when I first met you, I felt like I knew you for years.
That's
like
amazing.
You and Christian. And for those that don't know you, can you share a little bit about your story, your journey, and then maybe how we met? You guys played at our live recording and then Baptized California. So maybe share a little bit about your journey.
Okay, we have a lot to discuss.
Yes.
So I started playing piano when I was 5 years old. I started taking classical piano lessons, and apparently it was my idea to start taking piano lessons, but once I realized I had to practice, it was another story. I did not like the practicing. But once I got into it, my parents saw a natural ability and they wouldn't let me quit. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in a home where my dad was a Christian music artist for over 40 years.
Wow.
He's amazing, absolute legend. And so I grew up in ministry. My mom always traveled with my dad. And so they started taking me when I was 6 weeks old. And so I grew up in ministry, grew up in music ministry really with my parents. And so they started me with the classical piano lessons when I was 5, and I took for 10 years. And it was a big family commitment. It was a private lesson once a week, a group lesson once a week. So you had the peer pressure of performing whatever you were learning in front of your friends. And a parent had to be present at both of those lessons. And so my mom came to every lesson with me, and they made me practice before school every day. So it was like, you have homework after school, you have activities after school, you're not getting this done after school. So we're getting it done before school, 30 minutes before school every day. And so it was definitely a huge commitment, but I owe everything to them, to them continuing to help me develop in that way. And so I'm so thankful. Wow. So then I started, I kind of transitioned out of classical. I took for 10 years, like I said, and transitioned into worship music around the time I was 14. I started playing keys at my youth group when I was 14, and that was at Gateway Church in the Dallas area. And so I played and MD'd there, which MDing means music directing, for those that don't know.
I just found that out, yeah.
And so you actually have a microphone that you're talking to the band and everyone on the platform. Even some of the production team can hear you, but no one in the congregation can hear you. So it's a little secret that's going out right now.
Yes.
So, but that's called the MD mic. So I played keys and MD'd there for 14 years.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And so I was born and raised there basically in worship. And so, that's really where it all started.
So cool. So, I mean, Jessica, I did piano when I was maybe 10.
Okay.
And my mom made me tried to take piano lessons, but I was horrible. And I like to play around on it, but I was never good, so I quit. I think I took it for maybe almost 2 years.
Okay.
And then she made all of me and my siblings take piano, but all of us were not meant to do that. So I'm so glad that you stuck with it.
You never know. There might be another way for you.
I know. I'm like, maybe one of my daughters, Chloe, I feel like somebody gave her a prophetic word that she would be a pianist. And so I'm like, and I always ask her, do you want to play the piano? after that word, and she's like, no, Mom. And I'm like, oh man. So that's so cool to hear your story. So now you are the main keyboardist, right? You play keys for Carrie Job and Cody Carnes. Is that
That's
correct?
right.
And so how did that all happen?
So I grew up at the same church with Carrie growing
Okay.
up. So I met her when I
Yes.
was 14 at Gateway. And then Cody actually came to our church. I was probably 18 or 19 when he came to Gateway. And so we were in the same friend group, and I've known them forever now, actually. I guess like going on 20 years now, which is crazy.
Oh, that's amazing.
So we have a lot of history, leading worship together. So I was there for, like I said, 14 years. And then I went through some health challenges that just uprooted me from that area entirely and actually ended up redirecting me to Nashville, it's just incredible how God uses things like that in our lives to redirect us. So I ended up in Nashville. That was 2018 when I moved to Nashville. And I had no plan to leave Dallas or Gateway at all. It was really, I could have stayed there forever. And, but like I said, the Lord just really redirected me. I kept visiting Nashville and felt this pull there. And I was like, I think I have to go. I think I'm supposed to be there. And I had no plan, no job, no intentions really of ever even getting back into playing. I was just focused on recovering health-wise. And so I was always involved in different creative outlets, and I was totally fine if I never even played again, really. And of course, I loved it, but I just didn't know what the Lord had for me. So I had been there for a couple of years, and Carrie and Cody called me and said, we feel like the Lord is asking us for you to be on Carrie's live album. And I was like, are you sure you called the right girl? No, I mean, like I said, we had so much history together, but I wasn't playing at the time. I wasn't doing anything like that in Nashville yet. And so I remember FaceTiming my parents after that phone call and just crying and just saying, I can't believe I'm going to get to do this again. It just felt like a whole new lease on life. And it really set everything up for this whole season of life. It's amazing.
It's amazing. Now, we love Christian, your husband. Is that where you guys met? Was in Nashville?
No, actually, we did end up meeting in Nashville, but
Yeah.
that was actually a little bit more recent. So that's, I mean, that's a whole other story.
Yes, actually, we need to hear about this story because you guys have a very unique story of how you met. And I think it will encourage so many people and young people that are waiting for the right person.
Right.
And so your unique story, I would love to hear more about how you guys met.
So let's back up, I guess. Yeah. I always imagined getting married at a really young age. I always dreamt of getting married, sketching wedding dresses, writing letters to my husband, the whole nine yards. And when I was about 11, I committed to the Lord that I really wanted to wait and save my heart, not just my heart for my husband, but also my body. Yeah. And so that was a big commitment at 11. And then growing up at Gateway, I was the only girl in the band, and I was in more of a leadership role. And I knew all the guys in a group setting, and it was just always clear to me that, this isn't it. And so I had different opportunities and just never felt peace about it. And then that season was longer than expected. I kind of, I always imagined getting married young. My mom got married when she was 19. And my parents have an amazing God story of how they met. My dad spotted my mom at one of his concerts.
No way.
And they didn't meet that night. He literally somehow contacted somebody, like, who is this girl kind of thing, got her contact information and wrote her a letter, mailed her a letter. And she was a fan. She literally got fan mail. I mean, not fan mail. It was opposite. She got a letter from him, and she would always go to his concerts when he was in town and stuff and just enjoyed his music. Wow. And so she got a letter from him in the mail, and she was like, this can't be for me. He has the wrong person. And so anyway, I always admired their story and loved their story and always dreamt of God writing a miraculous love story for me. And so I thought that would be at a young age, and the years went by and it just was never the right thing. So by the time, I guess 17 years went by after that initial prayer to the Lord, and I was in Nashville, and my life was so full, so fulfilling. I had done ministry in so many countries. I had traveled the world doing ministry. I had so many cool opportunities, but had still not been on one date.
Wow.
And so I was like, God, what's going on here, And so I had been in Nashville for a couple of years, still hadn't met, there were no good prospects. So I was like, you know what? This is so serious to me. Dating just felt like for marriage. The intention was marriage, and it just didn't feel like anything casual about it, And, but it had just become so serious in my heart that I just thought I need to do something to loosen the grip on this because it just feels too intense.
Yeah.
And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to download a couple of dating apps. How crazy is that? Yeah. I don't know. So I was like, I'm going to download a couple of dating apps and just show this is my way of proving to the Lord and to myself that I'm open to however you want to do this for me. Mm-hmm. And God really took me up on that prayer.
Really? Wow.
So I downloaded some dating apps. I started just going on dates, and it really just loosened that grip, like I said, of it just feeling too intense. And I met some nice guys, but it was just always obvious this is just not it kind of thing. So it was early 2021, and I had just come to the end of my hope rope.
Yeah.
I was really discouraged, and one of my best friends had just gotten engaged. And it was the kind of thing, all your friends, you're like, they don't even care about getting married, and they're finding the right guys.
It doesn't that always seem like it's the case?
It's crazy.
Oh,
and
goodness.
I'm like, okay, I'm one of the last single girls in my friend group. I've celebrated all the weddings. I've, done all the baby showers. We're on to 1 kid, 2 kid, 3 kids. Like, what's going on, And so, one of my best friends had gotten engaged. And I was just so discouraged. I was so excited for her, obviously, but like, man, what is going on? And so come August 2021, I was going to be maid of honor in her wedding. It was coming up in November. Oh. So we're 3 months out at this point. I was going to be maid of honor. My dad was marrying her. It was a big family hometown kind of wedding. So I said to her, I have no idea where the faith even came to say this, because I was truly at the end feeling. But I was like, you know what? I said to her, I want us to pray that my husband will be with me at your wedding. And I was like, even hearing myself say that now is just so in the natural. It was not happening. There were 0 options. So she said, okay, let's pray. We're going to believe for that. And so not even 2 weeks later, I connected with Christian.
Oh my goodness.
On one of the dating apps. And we started talking, and he lived out of town. We were not living in the same city at the time. And he flew in for our first date. And after our first date, I called my parents and I said, I would be surprised if this isn't it. I think this might be it.
No way, really?
Yeah. And I had always prayed that the right one would be just as obvious as all the not right ones. All the not right ones were always so obvious. And he answered that prayer. And so he's here with me today. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's the, it's God's faithfulness in human flesh. It's amazing.
That is so cool. That story is so amazing. And just the fact that you were waiting too, I think that's so key is a lot of times, I worked with young adults. Mark and I did young adult ministry in Idaho. And God delays are not always denials, but, and a lot of times people think that they're punishment, but I truly believe that they're a preparation for what God has in store for you. And our timing is not God's timing. Our human understanding of God's timing is so different, right? He operates out of space and time. And so I think a lot of times, even before I met Mark, I was like, man, God, when is, I got married at 27 and I had been waiting, God, where, who is the one for me, all that, and just waiting and believing for that right one. And I think the thing that, if you remember anything that I just said right now, is remember that, when things are silent, when you're in a waiting period, remember that when you're taking a test, the teacher is always silent during the test. And so I think a lot of times people are like, I can't hear from God. Why do I have to keep waiting? But I think that just remember that the teacher is always silent during the test. And I remember Chloe coming home the other day and she was telling me that she took a math test and she's like, I can't stand that. It's so quiet during the test. But I'm like, but doesn't it help you take the test better? You know? and so I think that denials, that's something that we need to remember, is denials are not, or delays are not always denials. And I think they're a setup for the promotion and the things that are better. I love this verse. It's one of my favorite verses is Ephesians 3:20. Now to him, is that yours?
That came to mind as I was preparing for today. I love that.
I love that. It says, now to him who's able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we could think or ask or imagine, according to the power that works in us. And so I think that God can do exceedingly abundantly more than what we can dream, pray for. You know, if we're waiting on a promise, if we're waiting on, okay, who's the right one or whatever, God delays are not denials. I think they're just a setup for what God has in store for you. So I love that. That is so cool. And then Christian is on this set today, and we'll have to show everybody afterwards, Christian. And so what a cool story of how you guys met and just the process. I love what you were saying. You stepped out of your comfort zone.
Very much so.
Yeah.
We both of us, the longer we know each other, the funnier it is that we met that way to me, because we are both the least likely people to have met someone that way.
Right.
And God can just use anything if we're open to it. Wow. And I don't understand his timing. You know, we met when I was 31. We got married when I was 33. And in the church world, that's a little old to be single in normal life and in the world. Obviously, everyone's waiting really later to get married. But in the church world, it just feels like, man, I don't know if this is going to happen for me. I don't understand God's timing, but I wouldn't trade waiting for anything. And God is a God of redemption. And he can do in a moment what would otherwise take a lifetime.
That's so good. I love that. Now, how would you, Jessica, you encourage others that are watching, listeners that are watching, maybe they're in a season of waiting. How would you encourage them to pray through that whole process of the waiting period?
You know, Christian and I were talking about this morning of there's nothing more attractive than someone living their life, someone enjoying their life. And so I would actually just say, live your life, dream, travel, you know, become an expert at something, put in those 10,000 hours to become an expert at your craft, travel, see the world, become a friend that you would, you know, the kind of friend that would support and celebrate in the way that you hope to be celebrated someday, show up at the wedding showers, the baby showers, all the stuff. And it's hard on the heart some days, you know, some days are harder than others, but God is faithful. And if he's been faithful in just one area of your life, it's proof that he will be faithful in this specific area as well. I had seen God be faithful in every other area of my life except this one. And it was the one that I really cared about. You know, it was the one that I really dreamt of. And, but building that history with God is what carries us in the waiting. And it's really a muscle to strengthen because we're always going to be waiting on something, right? Even once we have, you know, okay, I got the husband, but having the one is not I think there's so much emphasis on just finding the one and then what? That's the end of the story. No, that's the beginning of a story. It's the beginning of two individual lives coming together now united in God. And it's not the end all be all. It's just the beginning of something new. And so we're always going to face things that we're waiting on, whether it's a house or healing or a job or, you know, breakthrough in whatever area. And so I think really if you are waiting for a spouse or whatever you're waiting on, if you can see it as a muscle that you're strengthening with the Lord, it's something that's that skill is going to carry you through so many seasons of life.
I love that. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And that like strengthening that muscle. And I think that's so good. Mark always talks about my husband. He always says that, you know, when we are in junior high, we want to be in high school. When we're in high school, we want to be in college. We can't wait to get in college.
Right.
When we're in college, we're trying to find the one, right? And then when we find that person, then we want kids. And then it's like, and then we want, you know, to have time away from the kids for a little bit. You know, there's always something that we're waiting on. But I love what you were saying is strengthening that muscle. And I think that's what God does through the waiting seasons. He teaches us and patience. He teaches us to wait on him and to trust in his timing. And I loved all that you said. That was beautiful. Now I know you and Christian, you guys work together in ministry. How is that like working together? I know you guys are married. Do you guys like working together in ministry?
We love working together.
Yeah.
So Christian is a sound designer for film. So he adds special effects, audio stuff to music videos and commercials, short films, stuff like that. So the footsteps you hear in a video,
That's him.
Okay. That kind of thing. So he does much more than that, but that's the simplest way to explain it.
That's
so
amazing.
So what he does is adjacent to me, but he works really in the secular world, and I'm kind of working in the Christian world. And but our paths have crossed quite a bit in our work, and so we love it when they do. It's our favorite to be able to do stuff together. And whenever we've come to Oceans, we've been able to do stuff together.
That's cool. I love
And
that.
that's our favorite thing, is being able to do anything creative together.
That's amazing. So you have played you've been all over the world, Jessica. You played at even Carnegie Hall. You've had some incredible worship moments. And what would you say would be your most impactful worship moment or experience that you've been in?
It's a really hard question.
I know, because you've been in so many amazing ones.
It's just so cool, all the opportunities that I've had and the rooms that God has put me in. We're just so thankful every day for the opportunities that we've gotten. One of my favorites is being in Brazil. Have you ever been to Brazil?
I have not, but I've heard of amazing
You have got
things
to
in
go
Brazil.
to Brazil. Those people are so passionate for Jesus. They are so on fire for Jesus, and the atmospheres in worship there are just absolutely electric. Their hunger and their passion for Jesus. You mentioned Carnegie Hall. That's a top moment. We rearranged the songs for Carnegie Hall. So we had a whole orchestra. We had a 200-person choir.
Wow.
And it was a black tie event. So we got all dressed up, which was really fun. And the songs, we rearranged them to where they were more cinematic, more beautiful, just more beautiful with the strings and everything. And that was a heavenly experience. It just felt like a holy, heavenly, majestic experience.
Amazing.
And it was always a dream of my dad's to play Carnegie Hall.
Oh.
And he never got to play. And so my parents came, and I feel like it was a dream fulfilled in another lifetime for him almost. Christian got this photo of my dad from a distance, just worshiping his heart out. And it's a tearjerker. It's so, so sweet. So yeah, we've gotten to do some really incredible things. I'm so thankful.
That's amazing. That's the most special, I think, that when your parents, they are just so proud. And I bet at that moment I can imagine. It was so cute. My parents they're big on prayer and revival. And so every morning my mom would wake me up every morning on Sunday, and she's like, "It's revival day, Rachelle." It was really cute. And so anyway, when we did Baptize California and they came to it, it was so cute. It was kind of like your dad in that moment where my parents were just so overwhelmed by just like what was happening, all the people getting baptized, and they were just lost in that moment in worship. And Mark tapped to me and he's like, "Rachelle, look at your parents. They're so proud." And I'm sure that's what your dad was,
so
just
sweet,
so proud of you in that moment. Well, that's so special. Now, okay, you've had incredible moments like that. What would be your favorite worship song right now, currently, or maybe top two? Do you have a favorite worship song right now?
In this season, I have had the opportunity to play with several artists that I grew up listening to. And that has been a really, really special experience. And so I would say, there's some of those Martin Smith songs.
Oh, my favorite.
Did You Feel the Mountains Tremble? I Could Sing of Your Love Forever, Majesty, Obsession, getting to play all of those with him. We've done several tours with him, and then he was at Baptize with us, and getting to play some of those songs with, a legend, and his voice is so iconic. It's so reminiscent, and it just takes you back to those moments with the Lord,
It does.
even, from your whole upbringing. And some of those moments have been my favorite lately, is getting to play some of those songs from my childhood with the actual icon, with the legend, and just hearing their voice live. And even Taya, I got to play with Taya recently. We played Oceans. I mean, what? How is that even possible? My 14-year-old self would just lose it, wouldn't even be able to comprehend. So maybe some of those moments have been some of my favorite lately.
That's amazing. Well, yeah, all those people, it's just amazing how God is using you. And I love that you were saying, with Martin Smith, I love him. He was one of my favorites. And then when he was playing with you guys at Baptized California, that was, that moment. And when he took the flag and that was beautiful. I'll remember that always. But
Same.
Yeah. So as someone deeply immersed in worship ministry, what do you feel like God is saying to I think maybe to the full body of Christ, the Big C Church? What do you think God is doing in worship right now? Is there something that God's been speaking to you about worship?
I think we're just seeing across the board a much deeper level of hunger. And our corporate times in worship, we're going to a much deeper place than we've ever been. Just across the board, I think, and with our younger generation, they're not interested in fluff, not interested in the surface level. They're really hungry for something authentic, something real, something genuine, and something deeper than what we've experienced in the past. And so it's really exciting to be a part of. It's exciting to be in rooms like that where you can just feel the expectation and the anticipation. And I mean, that's what you guys are experiencing at Oceans. I mean, even corporately, what I've been in at church is just the hunger is just so tangible and exciting.
Yeah, well, it's so cool. I love that you said people are so hungry, because I just saw online that Barna did a study to Gen Zers or with Gen Zers, and they're the most open to Jesus than any other generation.
Wow.
Which is incredible. So the fact that I think that just is a testament to they just want the real Jesus.
Right.
They're hungry for him. They're hungry and they're open to him. And my Kenzie, who's a Gen Zer, she was like, Mom, I'm telling you, my generation is so open to Jesus. And she kept telling me this, and so to have Barna do that study, and I think it was in 2024, or It was a recent study, is just mind-blowing. And I think that there's a harvest, and God is raising up people to reach this young generation. And I love it because it was crazy. I was doing a podcast with Lindy Kofer, and I was telling her,
love Lindy.
I love her. I know she's like my fave. But I was doing a podcast with her, and I was telling her, you know what? I saw this last summer. I went to a youth camp, or our church's youth camp, and my husband and I, we've done youth ministry for so long, but I have never seen that level of hunger in the young generation.
Wow.
Like they would do altar calls. Every altar call, there's usually people sitting back. They don't go up to the front. Everybody would just run up to the front to get prayed for or to receive more, from Jesus. And so I thought that was so beautiful that this generation is so hungry for God. And I love that you get to lead them into worship, and what a beautiful thing that you get to do. But I just wanted to ask you, what was that moment? I know we kind of shared a little bit about Baptized California.
Yes.
And you guys were able to be a part of that. What was that moment like, seeing, people getting baptized? I mean, you saw them in the front, but also in the back, in the ocean, getting baptized. What was that like for you guys?
Baptized was one of our favorite things we've ever gotten to be a part of.
That's
honestly,
awesome.
It was so fun and so special. I've never played on the beach like that. That enormous stage out on the beach was so fun. And how many, over 10,000 people got baptized just that day.
Yeah.
It's just remarkable. And it's so exciting to be a part of what God's doing, not just in California, but around the world.
Yeah. Were there any key takeaways or any key moments that you remember? Obviously, there was so many worship moments. I'm trying to think. For me, there was that was really special was families. I think there was one family that goes to our church, but their whole family got baptized.
Wow.
And they hadn't all been baptized before. So, and I think there was maybe 8 of them, or 7 to 8 that got baptized, which was really special. So that was a key, special moment that I saw. Was there anything for you that
so
you remember?
incredible.
I know.
I'm trying to think.
just the worship part. I mean, all of you
The
guys
worship
leading.
was incredible. We
Yeah.
were so focused on facilitating
Yeah.
the worship that we missed a lot of the
Yeah.
baptisms.
Yeah.
We saw the ones that were happening down right in front of us, but we missed
Yeah.
a lot of the ones that were down by the beach because we were just facilitating the worship. But it was such an
Yeah.
incredible few days, and we're just so honored to be a part of it. Thank you for having
We were
us.
so excited. That's kind of how we got connected is you guys, we connected with you guys and you were able to play for Baptize California. And I'm like, yes, we loved you guys instantly. And you guys have such an incredible heart for Jesus and worship. And so I loved that you got to do that. So I know you get to be a part of a lot of tours and events. And I'd love to hear about what you feel like. I've already asked you what you feel like God is doing for the Big C Church, but is there something that God's individually been speaking to you about worship in particular? Maybe something that he's been breathing on that he's been speaking to you about in regards to worship?
I think it's just going back to that hunger that I
Yeah.
mentioned, and everybody being willing to go to a deeper place. So I think for us in a worship team setting, we've really been doing our best to just facilitate what God wants to do, coming in with a plan, but being open to it changing.
Yeah.
And having the right people in place to be able to make that happen, to flow and to just go to that deeper place together and not lead everybody where you haven't been.
That's good.
And just being willing to all say, okay, let's just ditch the plan right now and go for it. And so, yeah, I think it just goes back to that hunger that we've really been seeing everywhere.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that. So for anybody listening today, for maybe they're aspiring worship leaders or musicians, or they want to do that one day, what would you suggest or what would you say to them, for them, or what advice would you give them?
I just always suggest getting involved at your church. Find a good, healthy church and get involved. I'm a local church girl.
Yes.
And born and raised, I just will always, cut me open and bleed the local church.
Oh,
I just
I
love it.
that.
I love being in church, and that's where you can get all those reps. A lot of this stuff is just, gaining experience and growing and being in the atmospheres and being in worship, being in the presence, and even being able to recall what those songs are. If somebody goes into a spontaneous moment, knowing what that song is reflective of, hey, I know that song because I've just been in church.
Wow.
I've sung that song. I've been in church. I worship with it at home or whatever it is. And so I would just encourage people to get involved at church and grow in that area and see where it takes you.
That's really good. Now, for people that, or maybe they're a keyboardist like you and they play the keys at church, and how do they learn to maybe flow, really, if the Holy Spirit, I love our church because Pastor David, Pastor Mel, they're so good at, Mark will just look up at them and hey, can we go here? And not all pastors will do that, but my husband will do that. But he's like, hey, can you go sing this song? He'll mouth to them, hey, can you sing How Great Is Our God Now or something? How can they, what advice would you give them? Obviously they need to watch the main leader, follow their lead.
Yes.
But how would you encourage them in just flowing with what the Holy Spirit wants to?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's just honestly gaining experience with the worship leaders that they're under and the authority that they're under, and learning how those people lead, how they operate, how they think, and, anticipating where they might go, anticipating what they might do is really exciting. And it's so fulfilling to be able to anticipate what somebody might do. And as an MD, and not just, along with being a keys player, but an MD is another layer of anticipating. And so I love that. The more you experience with a worship leader, the more you get to know them, the more the body language, the little tiny movements. It's so fun to be like, oh, I think Carrie might start singing, this song. And I'll have that thought. And then, 20 seconds later, she starts singing it. And it's like, yes. It's just such a rewarding moment. And so, but all that comes down to those reps, just getting in those reps with the worship leaders person in those environments. It's so cool.
Love that. And I love that. I love this quote from Jack Hayford, and I'll probably have to read it here, but worship changes the worshiper into the image of the one worshiped. And I love that. I think that Pastor Joel today at our church was speaking about identity. And I really do feel like when we worship God, we're changed into the image of God. We're image bearers. My dad always growing up, he was a pastor, and he would always say that you're an image bearer. He would always tell us kids, and he loved to speak about identity and that we mirror God's image. And so I love that quote, that worship changes the worshiper
That's so good.
into the image of the one worshiped. And that's by Jack Hayford. But I love that. And I think that truly when I worship God in spirit and in truth, it's like, man, I just want to be more like him. It's all, when I leave and worship, whether it's at home or at church, and I come out of that worship and I just want to be more like Jesus.
That's so good.
And that's truly my heart. Every time I worship, I'm like, I just take out all the junk, take out all the me and the self, and I just want to be like him. And so I love that that's your heart. And so I'm so glad to get to know you. And hey, so you're an incredible worship leader. I mean, you traveled the world. You just are so inspiring, but you also are incredible with like fashion. Your fashion inspo.
That means a lot coming from you.
No, are you kidding me?
The fashion icon.
You had this white skirt on the other day that I loved. I was obsessed. It was like lacy and it was so cute. So have you always loved fashion?
I have always loved fashion.
Okay, yep, me too.
My grandmother sewed growing up. She made quilts and stuff, and she had a trunk full of scraps. And I would get into those scraps, and I would tape them together. I'd pin them together. I'd rubber band them together. I would do anything to make little tops for myself. And yeah, I've always loved it. Once I got into college, I was trying to decide a major, and I got there. I said, "What's the closest thing you have to a fashion degree?" And they said art, and I said, "I'll take it. Well, let's go with art." So, but yeah, I've just always loved it. And then growing up in Dallas, the style was so much more over the top. I was a lot more feminine, a little over the top, Tool, just anything so fun. Yeah. And then I moved to Nashville, and everybody was so grungy, just heavy grunge. So not my vibe. Everybody was in black leather. Everybody was in Doc Marten boots, especially at that time.
Okay, yeah.
And so it's funny to see how even geographically you kind of evolve into different aspects of your own style. So I wear a lot more black now. I'm a little more toned down than I was in Dallas. But yeah, I love all that stuff.
That's awesome. How do you think your style has changed throughout the years? Has it just, I know for me particularly, like my style, I look back and so I used to do a magazine. So I would always study trends and all of that. And then I would put mood boards together a lot. So I loved all of that. And I almost went to fashion school in San Francisco, but I ended up not doing that, did Bible college instead. And so I have a love for fashion as well. But I feel like my style has changed quite a bit. Every year I feel like, because I love trends.
Right.
I love to follow the trends. And so I love all of that. But I feel like it's my style, even from last year. But I do have to say, this is the annoying thing that I wish changed earlier, Jessica, is my hair. So I like my hair. I was like, why did I wear my hair like that for years? Okay, so I had the blonde cut, or blunt bangs, bleach blonde. Mm-hmm. But I had those bangs for probably 12 years.
That's a long time.
It's a very long time.
I had the blunt bangs too, but they didn't last me quite that long.
Yeah. And I'm like, I wish that would have changed, but it didn't. And so it was my sister's sister-in-law and my daughter that said, Rachelle, you got to give up those bangs. It's time. We got to see what's underneath that forehead. So anyway, I wish that part would have changed, but my fashion has changed.
It's so fun to look back on all those old photos. I got into fashion blogging for a while.
You did? Oh, that's awesome.
But same thing with the hair. I had dark red hair, like almost burgundy for a while, and I loved it. It was so fun.
Oh, I bet that was pretty on you.
I'm always tempted to go back to that, but blonde Blonde is that's the root.
Yes, that's awesome. Well, I love that you love fashion. I think that's why I loved you too. I was like, she loves worship and fashion. I love all of that stuff too. So, well, I loved getting to talk with you. And is there something I'd love to end on what worship means to you? And if you want to even encourage some of the listeners, like with worship, if they're aspiring to be a worship leader or God speaking to them and leading them into ministry. What does worship mean to you? And then how would you encourage them in leading them into worship? Yeah.
It sounds so cliche, but worship is a lifestyle. Growing up, it was never a career or even a path you could take for a job. That's like so outside of my normal thinking. Even to think of it as that is kind of uncomfortable for me in a way. And so, but yeah, I would say it's a lifestyle. It comes from your, internal expression, and to even think about being able to introduce that as a job or as a path in some way is so remarkable that we can even pursue something like that. But it's such a high calling, it's such an honor, and it comes with a lot of sacrifice. And so I would say I don't know what to say. Just worshiping at home and everything flowing out of that place before you're ever on the platform is just, it's a lifestyle. It's not even just music. It's how we're interacting. It's how we're dressing. It's our creative expression in other areas. And all of that is worship to the Lord. And so, it's crazy to even think that the career path is an option. But I'm so thankful to be able to even be doing this. But, I think our faithfulness, God meets us with our faithfulness and opens the next right door for us. And so I never imagined pursuing this as a quote unquote career, but just my diligence met God's faithfulness, even just in preparation for this. And so I feel like as we're faithful in our day-to-day lives, just taking one step in front of the other and doing the next right thing, saying yes to the next right thing, God is so faithful to open up the next doors in our lives.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Doing the next right thing. And I love what you're talking about, diligence too, and preparation. That's really, really good. Well, would you mind praying for those that are watching today or listening? Just pray that maybe they're not in ministry or they're not wanting to be in worship. Maybe they don't have a good voice or that's not their thing, but everybody's called to worship.
Absolutely.
And so maybe you could pray for everyone listening that they would just have a greater understanding of what it is to be an image bearer, to really truly give I think this was another quote that when we worship, we give our breath back to God.
So good.
God breathes in us, and so when we're worshiping, we're just giving our breath back to God. So could you pray for our audience and pray that they would have an encounter with God and they would truly have this moment where God made me to worship him.
Yes.
And so if you could pray for us, that'd be amazing.
Absolutely.
Yay.
God, we just thank you so much for this time together. We thank you for the gift of worship and every expression that is worship, Lord. And we do give it back to you. Everything that you've given to us, God, our desire is to give it back to you in some way, shape, or form, Lord. It feels so insignificant compared to everything you've done for us. But God, we offer our lives, we offer our hearts, we offer our giftings. God, everything that you've given us, we do give back to you and just lay it down at your feet. God, we thank you for every opportunity you've given us, and we thank you for opening the next right thing up. If somebody's desiring something or waiting on something or trusting you for the next right thing, God, I just pray that hope would arise in our hearts, that everyone watching would feel encouraged and inspired to just continue following after you, to continue following your plan for our lives and giving it all to you. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Oh, so powerful. I loved getting to talk with you and finding out more info about your life, how you and Christian met. That was incredible. And you're just too cute.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for coming.
That means a lot coming from you.
Well, we have to do this again. And thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Collective Talk, where we talked all about music and ministry. Stay tuned for future episodes as we dive into the topics of prayer, family, and ministry.